Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, he's expanding his war on woke and taking on Bud Light directly. He's threatening legal action against Anheuser-Busch over its social media promotion with a transgender influencer. The Instagram video sparked enormous conservative outrage and backlash and sent Bud Light sales plummeting.
In a letter to Florida's pension fund manager obtained by CNN, DeSantis suggests that the beer company breached its legal duties to its shareholders when it collaborated with what he calls radical social ideologies. Here's what the governor told Fox News last night.
Since we do have these shares, we believe that when you take your eye off the ball like that, you're not following your fiduciary duty to do the best you can for your shareholders. So we're going to be launching an inquiry about Bud Light and InBev, and it could be something that leads to a derivative lawsuit filed on behalf of the shareholders of the Florida Pension Fund.
DeSantis has become pretty well known for injecting himself and Florida into the middle of America's culture wars. He's been fighting to gain momentum, though, in the presidential race and to close that gap with Donald Trump. So far, it's been pretty challenging for DeSantis, but despite all of the talk of a pivot, we don't really see that in terms of the message yet.
Certainly not on the messaging, and even though he's changed some of his interview venues or the platforms, obviously having that exclusive with Jake Tapper earlier, it is very clear that this is an issue or this is a broader kind of target that he believes works. And he has, I think, results, no question about it, in Florida. The most interesting thing about DeSantis is that he's, unlike a lot of people who've just used rhetoric on culture war stuff or kind of verbal tics, he's actually put policy behind it or lawsuits, or you look at what has happened in Florida in terms of the legislature, and we've been seeing more results of that over the course of this week when it comes to what the school board has been doing, putting into place one of the laws that DeSantis helped shepherd through. And new this morning, Vice President Kamala Harris will be responding to those efforts by the school board, adding a last-minute trip to Jacksonville to her itinerary today. It is in direct response to the state's newly approved standards for teaching Black history. One of the requirements for middle school students is to include, quote, how slaves developed skills which in some instances could be applied for their personal benefit. Now, Harris forcefully condemned that new curriculum on Thursday.
Just yesterday in the state of Florida, they decided middle school students will be taught that enslaved people benefited from slavery. They insult us in an attempt to gaslight us, and we will not stand for it.
Well, CNN's Priscilla Alvarez joins us now live from the White House. Priscilla, I thought this was fascinating last night because this clearly wasn't a pre-scheduled trip, at least from the time that we usually expect a vice president or presidential trip. This happened fairly quickly. The decision was made to send the vice president down and for the vice president to go down herself. Tell us about the backdrop here of why this happened.
And it's also not the first time that this has happened, Phil. Vice President Harris also went to Tennessee following controversy that happened in the legislature there. So this is part of the ongoing trips over the course of the summer that the vice president has made to highlight areas where the White House and Democrats see Republican attacks against what they call the freedoms like abortion and now also education. Now, again, this is the first Biden administration official to go to Florida since those controversial standards were approved. And it is an opportunity for the vice president to talk about what you heard there in condemning these standards, fiercely criticizing them, and also what she said earlier this week at that same event, calling it, quote, revisionist history. Now, again, to remind viewers, these are standards that would teach students how slaves developed skills that could be applied for personal benefit, and then also touches on massacres and, quote, acts of violence perpetrated against and by African Americans. This, again, has received fierce criticism, and it is an opportunity, again, for Vice President Harris to go and highlight the disagreements that the White House has with this and talk with civil rights leaders, parents, and teachers.